The sharp click of handcuffs shattered the calm of the morning street. A young black man was shoved against the patrol car, his face twisted in shock, red marks forming around his wrists where the metal bit deep. He had only been waiting for a friend, but to the two officers, that was reason enough. People stopped. Some lifted their phones hesitantly. No one stepped forward. Everyone thought this would be just another silent injustice, another moment swallowed by fear and forgotten by noon. But then she appeared. No shouting, no frantic filming, just a simple phone call. To the one place powerful enough to make even arrogant men tremble. The morning sun hit hard against the concrete, bouncing off glass storefronts and car hoods along Lexington Avenue. Miles adjusted the strap of his backpack and leaned against a lamppost, checking his phone again. 9:43 a.m. Isaac was late. Miles shoved the phone back into his pocket and glanced up just in time to catch the slow roll of a black and white cruiser, two white officers inside, eyes locked on him. Miles stiffened instinctively. The cruiser pulled over, doors slammed. Footsteps heavy. "Morning," said the taller cop, buzz cut. Broad shoulders, his badge read, Jack. Miles nodded. "Morning, officer." The second one, stockier with a shaved head, Cole tilted his chin up. "What are you doing here?" "Son, waiting for a friend," Miles replied carefully. Jack squinted. "You live around here?" "No, sir. I'm meeting my friend. He lives 3 blocks down." Cole circled slightly behind him. "Got any ID?" Miles swallowed. His fingers itched to reach for his wallet, but every warning his mother ever gave him echoed in his ears. "Yes, sir. It's in my back pocket. May I reach for it?" he asked. Voice steady but taut. Jack gave a lazy shrug. Slowly. Miles moved slow, deliberate. Pulling his wallet out and handing over his license, Jack snatched it, studied it, snorted. "You're from Westbridge," he said, glancing sideways at Cole. "Figures," Cole muttered. Miles kept his hands visible, fighting the flush creeping up his neck. "I haven't done anything wrong," Miles said, his voice quiet but firm. Jack stepped closer, invading his space. "You look nervous," Jack said. "Got something to hide?" "No, sir, just being careful." "Careful? Funny thing to say." Cole smirked. "Standing around in front of shops? People get nervous. I'm not bothering anyone," Miles said, forcing himself to hold their gazes. Cole snorted. "Not yet." There was a tense beat of silence. Then Jack folded the ID and shoved it into his shirt pocket. "Turn around," he barked. Miles blinked. "Sir, turn around," Jack repeated, hand moving toward his cuffs. "I didn't do anything," Miles protested. Stepping back instinctively, Cole moved fast, grabbing his arm roughly. "Resisting? Huh?" "I'm not resisting," Miles cried out, twisting instinctively but careful not to swing. A few heads turned from across the street. A woman slowed her stride, phone half raised. 2 teenagers near the bus stop froze, watching. "Get your hands behind your back," Jack barked, snapping one cuff onto Miles's wrist. "I swear, I'm just waiting for a friend," Miles gritted out, struggling to breathe through the panic squeezing his chest. Yeah, Cole sneered. "They all say that." The other cuff clicked into place with a brutal jerk. Miles winced. From across the sidewalk, a woman in a sleek gray suit paused mid-step, pulling sunglasses off her face. Eliza. Her brows furrowed as she watched the scene unfold. "What's the charge?" she called out. Voice sharp, cutting through the heat and tension. Jack barely glanced at her. "Interfering with an investigation." "Ma'am, mind your business." Eliza's hand slid into her handbag, pulling out her phone. "I am..." she said coolly. Miles met her eyes for a brief second, and something in the set of her jaw, the flinty calm in her gaze, made a knot in his chest loosen just slightly. Cole tugged Miles toward the cruiser roughly. The small crowd grew, muttering under their breaths, some pulling out phones to record. Jack glared at them. Disperse. People. Nothing to see. But there was plenty to see, and Eliza wasn't moving an inch. Miles stumbled as Cole shoved him forward. The metal cuffs dug into his wrists. "Keep moving," Cole snapped. "I didn't do anything," Miles repeated. Louder this time. "You didn't even tell me what I did. You fit the description." Jack barked. "That's all we need. I'm wearing a gray hoodie and black jeans." Miles said, "So are 100 other people out here. Funny. The guilty ones always talk the most," Cole said, unlocking the cruiser's back door. Across the sidewalk, Eliza was still standing, unmoved, phone in hand, eyes like ice. She raised the device to her ear. "Who are you calling?" Jack asked, sneering as he noticed. Eliza didn't flinch. "The Department of Defense." Jack let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Right, you do that." Cole turned his head slightly, frowning. Eliza's voice dropped, cool and clipped. "This is Eliza Ward. Clearance code Echo 7 Victor. Connect me to General Wright's direct line. Now." Miles froze. He turned his head as far as the cuffs allowed, looking at her with disbelief. The dispatcher on the other end must have said something surprising, because Jack's smirk started to fade. Eliza's next words were calm but firm. "I'm watching a young man being arrested without cause. I want federal response on site immediately. GPS ping from this phone, and tell the general his son is in cuffs." Dead silence. Jack stepped away from the cruiser, his posture suddenly uncertain. What did she just say? She said, "General Wright," Cole murmured. "As in the Pentagon Wright Eliza Ward," Jack echoed. "Isn't she—" "That can't be," but it was. In the crowd. People began raising their phones, recording, whispering. Miles blinked hard. She said, "What did she say? Eliza Ward?" Someone whispered from the crowd. "That's the General's chief protocol officer." Cole's jaw tightened. He leaned in toward Jack. "We need to let him go. Now." Jack shook his head. "We're too deep in it." "You'd rather go deeper." Eliza's voice cut in suddenly, loud and clear, because federal eyes are watching. Right now, Cole's hands twitched. Jack looked at Miles, then at the growing crowd, the camera phones, the tension, then sirens, not regular police sirens, low, deep-toned, government issue. 3 unmarked black SUVs swerved around the corner. Doors flew open. 4 men in suits stepped out fast, coordinated, calm like thunder. The crowd gasped. Phones swung toward them. One of them approached Eliza. "Ma'am." She nodded. "He's the target," she said, pointing at Miles. The man turned to Jack and Cole. "Release him. Now." Jack hesitated. "We're in the middle of—" "I said now." Cole fumbled with the keys, hurriedly unlocking the cuffs. The clatter as they hit the ground was deafening. Miles stepped back, rubbing his wrists. His breath came fast. Eyes wide. "Sir," one agent said gently. "Are you injured?" "No," Miles said, still in shock. I'm okay." "Escort him to the vehicle," the agent said. Miles turned to Eliza. "You know my dad." She gave a small smile. "I know who you are." Jack stepped forward, face pale. "This is a misunderstanding." The agent held up a hand. "You'll explain it downtown." 2 agents flanked Jack and Cole, escorting them aside. Eliza stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Miles's shoulder. "You're safe now," she said quietly, "but this isn't over." The black SUVs remained parked like silent threats along the curb, their engines idling low. Miles sat inside the middle SUV, his hands trembling slightly despite himself. Across from him, Eliza sat composed, phone still resting lightly in her palm. "You all right?" she asked, her voice low enough that it didn't carry. Miles nodded but didn't speak. His throat was dry. Through the tinted window, he could see Jack and Cole standing awkwardly on the sidewalk, flanked by 2 federal agents. The crowd had swollen, a sea of recording phones and whispered outrage. "What's going to happen to them?" Miles finally asked. Eliza met his gaze. "Consequences. Real ones." Outside, Jack was arguing, his hands gesturing wildly. "You don't understand," he said, his voice desperate. "We thought he was a threat. You can't blame us for being cautious." One of the agents, a tall man with a steely jaw, barely blinked. "You thought wrong." Cole shifted beside Jack, sweat beading at his temple. "Look, we didn't know he was important." The agent's face hardened. "You didn't need to know. You needed to treat him like a citizen. You failed." Jack's shoulders sagged visibly. Inside the SUV, Miles watched, heart hammering. He leaned closer to Eliza. "Why did you step in?" he asked, voice almost a whisper. Eliza turned slightly, her expression unreadable. "Because power without accountability is poison," she said. "And because you deserve better than to be cuffed like a criminal for standing still." Miles swallowed hard. "Thank you," he murmured. Her eyes softened briefly. "You don't owe me anything. This was long overdue." Another SUV door opened. A different agent, younger, slid into the seat next to Eliza. "Ma'am," he said crisply. "General Wright is on the line. He's requesting direct status." Eliza nodded and accepted the call. "Sir," she said smoothly, "the situation is contained. The target was unlawfully detained. We have witnesses and full video documentation." A pause. "Yes, sir," she said again. "Proceeding as you instructed." She ended the call and turned back to Miles. "Your father's furious," she said. Miles let out a shaky breath. "He's always been a little intense." Eliza almost smiled. "Today, he has every reason to be." Outside, the situation shifted again. The lead agent addressed the crowd now, voice booming. "Officers Jack Turner and Cole Briggs have been detained pending federal investigation for unlawful arrest and misconduct." A ripple of approval ran through the bystanders. Jack looked ready to collapse. Cole's mouth opened, then closed. Helpless, Jack turned sharply toward the lead agent. "You're ruining our careers over some mistake." The agent didn't blink. "No, you ruined your careers the moment you chose bias over duty." Eliza watched through the glass, her lips pressed into a thin line. Miles whispered, "Will they really lose everything?" Eliza answered without hesitation. "They already have." The younger agent beside her spoke up quietly. "Public trust division's involved now. Their badges won't survive the week." Miles leaned back in his seat, staring at the ceiling, emotions swirling too fast to name. "I didn't want this," he said softly. "No one ever does," Eliza replied. "Justice isn't about wanting. It's about doing what's right, even when it burns." Miles closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, the world outside the SUV somehow felt different, sharper, heavier, more awake. Miles leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the swirling crowd outside the SUV. Suddenly, the younger agent's earpiece crackled. He pressed it in, listening sharply, then glanced at Eliza. "Media's arriving. 3 news crews. Maybe more." Eliza's fingers tapped lightly against her thigh. "That was fast," she murmured. The agent gave a small shrug. "Bad news travels faster when it's caught on a dozen phones." Outside, Jack's voice rose again, harsh and panicked. You can't do this to us. We were following protocol. The lead agent stood firm. Protocol doesn't include racial profiling. We didn't profile anyone, Jack protested, voice cracking. He looked suspicious. Miles closed his eyes briefly, feeling the familiar ache of those words. Looked suspicious. Eliza shifted slightly toward him. Do you want to leave? She asked. Miles shook his head. No, I want to see it. Eliza nodded once, approving. The SUV's doors opened almost simultaneously. A quiet command. Miles stepped out with the agents. Eliza, just behind him, gasps from the crowd, whispers slicing the heavy summer air. Is that him? That's the kid. Phones lifted instantly. Miles straightened his shoulders, wiping sweaty palms against his jeans. The lead agent spoke loudly, addressing the gathering cluster of reporters now shoving mics over shoulders and bags. At approximately 9:45 a.m., 2 local officers detained Mr. Miles Carter without cause. Federal intervention was requested. Both officers are now under federal investigation for violation of civil rights. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Is it true he's connected to someone at the Pentagon? Was this a planned operation? Will the officers face criminal charges? The agent held up a hand. We are not taking questions at this time. Behind the flash of cameras, Jack's face twisted in desperation. He pushed toward the lead agent. You're ruining our lives over political crap. The lead agent turned slowly. No, he said. You ruined your lives the moment you decided suspicion could replace evidence. Cole stood frozen, staring at the ground like he might fall through it. Eliza stepped up beside Miles. Let's go, she said gently, as they moved toward a second SUV. A reporter called out, Young man, do you have anything you want to say? Miles hesitated. Eliza touched his elbow lightly. She didn't speak, didn't need to. He turned toward the cameras. For a second, the world went still. Then Miles said, voice even but strong, I hope next time. It won't take a powerful name to make people care. Silence. Even the clicking shutters seemed to pause. Miles turned away without waiting for a response. Inside the SUV, the doors slammed shut. The engine hummed to life. Eliza exhaled slowly, her expression unreadable. You did good, she said simply. Miles leaned his head back against the seat, the adrenaline crashing hard. I'm so tired, he whispered. I know, Eliza said, but you're not alone anymore. Outside, the street shrank away, a storm left behind. The first drops of change finally falling. By noon, the story had already exploded across every major news outlet. Clips of Miles being handcuffed without cause were everywhere broadcasted, tweeted, shared. His calm words to the reporters had gone viral within the hour. Inside a federal conference room now bathed in harsh fluorescent light, Jack and Cole sat at opposite ends of a long table. Neither spoke. Their badges lay on the table between them, silent, heavy, an internal affairs officer, a woman with steel-gray hair and a voice like sharpened glass, leaned forward. You are hereby suspended without pay, pending formal investigation, she said. Jack opened his mouth, then closed it again, his hands clenched into fists. Cole stared at the wall, hollow-eyed. You may retain counsel at your own expense, the woman continued, and be advised civil rights violations carry both federal and criminal consequences. Jack's voice cracked as he muttered, It wasn't supposed to go like this. The officer's eyes didn't waver. It went exactly like this the moment you chose prejudice over professionalism. Meanwhile, across the city, Miles sat with Eliza in a small, sunlit office overlooking downtown. General Wright was already on speakerphone, his voice a low rumble. Miles, the general said, steady but burning underneath. I should have been there. You couldn't have known, Miles answered quietly. I should have known they'd still look at you and see anything but who you are. Miles's throat tightened. He blinked hard, pushing back the sting in his eyes. I'm fine, Dad, he managed. No, son, the general said. You're strong. There's a difference. Eliza watched the exchange silently. Her arms crossed loosely. Her face unreadable, but proud. The general continued, his voice lower now. You set an example today that will outlast every headline. You stood your ground. You didn't let rage define you. Miles exhaled, shaky, but growing steadier. Thank you, sir, he said, voice firming. Eliza finally spoke. And with your permission, General, we intend to press full federal charges. No cover-ups, no deals. You have my blessing, the general said without hesitation. Burn the rot out. The line clicked dead, outside. The world kept spinning, but it spun differently now. Jack and Cole's faces plastered the news frozen mid-shout. Mid-handcuff, the mayor issued a hasty statement by late afternoon. The actions captured this morning are not reflective of our city's values. Effective immediately. We are initiating mandatory reform and bias training within our police department. Most people saw it for what it was, damage control. Miles didn't care. He walked beside Eliza through the marble hallways of the federal building, past reporters craning necks and whispering. How does it feel? She asked as they stepped outside into the blinding sunlight. Miles thought about it, about the weight of the cuffs, about the looks he had carried for so long without even noticing anymore, about standing in front of those cameras and saying what needed to be said. Heavy, he said finally, but right. Eliza smiled, small but real. Good, she said. The best victories usually are. They reached the steps. A few reporters raised their mics, but no one shouted. No one needed to. The world had already heard what mattered. Miles shoved his hands into his pockets and stared out at the city skyline, feeling for the first time like he wasn't just surviving it, he was shaping it. A week later, the world had moved on, but for Miles, everything was different. He sat on a bench in Riverside Park, elbows resting on his knees, staring out over the river. The late afternoon sun dipped low, painting everything gold. Footsteps approached. Eliza sat down beside him without a word. They watched the river in silence for a long moment before she spoke. You're a hard man to track down these days, she teased lightly. Miles gave a small smile. Trying to enjoy being invisible again, Eliza chuckled. Good luck with that. He shrugged. I didn't ask for any of it. Not the cameras, not the speeches, not being some kind of symbol. You didn't have to ask, Eliza said, her voice soft but certain. You earned it. Miles was quiet for a moment, then said, I don't feel like a hero. Good, she replied. Real heroes usually don't. The river lapped gently against the rocks below. Miles ran a hand through his hair. They're firing Jack and Cole officially next week, revoking their pensions, lifetime bans. Eliza nodded. Justice isn't always about revenge. Miles, it's about accountability. I know, he said. It's just weird, knowing everything changed because one person decided to step in. He glanced sideways at her. Because you did. Eliza tilted her head, considering. You know what the funny thing is, she said. When I picked up that phone, it wasn't because I knew who you were. It was because I knew what they were doing was wrong. Miles stared at her, something easing in his chest. I guess, he said slowly. It matters who's watching. Eliza smiled. It matters who's willing to act. Another silence stretched between them, but this one was warm, unhurried. Finally, Eliza stood, smoothing her suit jacket. "You coming?" she asked. Miles looked up. "Where?" She shrugged. "Wherever you want. It's your story now." He laughed under his breath, standing and slinging his backpack over one shoulder. "My story. Huh. Yours to tell, or not tell," Eliza said. "But whatever you do, walk forward." Miles squinted into the sunset. Walk forward. He thought about that, about everything it meant, about the path he hadn't chosen, but had walked anyway. And then he smiled, wide, real. "Let's go," he said. Together, they stepped off the bench, their shadows stretching long across the golden grass, two figures moving forward into whatever waited next. And this time, the world wasn't dragging him behind it. He was walking into it, head held high.